Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Your plot armor does not work with me today. Welcome.
Oh no. Oh no. We got the angry DM here.
Oh, we got a
Watch
badass
out.
here.
Yeah, watch out. We got a badass over here.
Okay. But yeah,
Today,
no, you go ahead.
today we're going to talk about why we think plot armor in D&D or any kind of tabletop game is complete and utter horseshit. And, it's a very good reason for it. I think a lot of people try to justify implementing it in, trying to prevent NPCs or PCs from dying.
Well,
But they're
yeah, we're having a hard time wrapping our heads around this concept, and it's because many of the, I'm going to call them excuses. These are not reasons, they're excuses for bad DM behavior, bad player behavior, not mature, and I don't mean mature of mature theme, but mature individuals, adults coming together to play this, or even kids coming together to play this, is more often than not, I can click on the trope page and laugh my ass off on all the little things that they'll call it. Joker immunity, Hitler time travel exemption act, distress ball, iron butt monkey. You got a lot of little things that are trying to be excused for your players not to suffer repercussions or death. And now, ultimately, when I say plot armor, it usually comes down to the term of repercussions for your actions, for your deeds. For me personally, this ranges more than just the simple bullshit of, oh, I rolled poorly. Like, those are DM fiat of, I'm gonna bullshit and fudge the dice. That's not plot armor. That's, okay, you've had a bad roll. The god's fate's gonna smile on you for this moment in time. It's not that it's going to wipe and absolve your sins away. It's very much, okay, yeah, sometimes numbers go fucky. But when it comes down to it sorry, one last thing. When it comes down to it, if you poke the evil bad doer level 1 and he's technically rendered out at level 20, don't be surprised if he just atomizes you. Don't get pissed. Yeah. You know your lesson.
Yeah. I think the heart of all of this is that what you'll have a DM, and this DM will have a very specific linear story in mind. Or maybe they're not even that hardcore, but they definitely have a specific story that they want to tell, regardless of the actions of the players. And, I was saying earlier, it's not even entirely plot armor. A lot of it is DM armor. Mm-hmm. Like, they have their story, they're obsessed with their story that they want to tell, and they are not flexible to the decisions of active players. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of these people do not know what to do with smarter players, with smarter or more advanced or skilled players, because if you were to remove the plot armor, a single decision could possibly just fuck the entire story. It could just screw the entire story up. And that's really the fault of the DM. It's not the fault of the players for using their imagination. You shouldn't punish players for using their imagination and for logically thinking something through to its closure point. If they have beaten you, they have beaten you. In that mode, what you need to do is next time around, come back with something a little bit better. Prepare for their playing style.
Now, here's one of the other arguments I'm going to dispel when these false hacks of DMs give their advice. And yes, I'm being very assholey because these are not real DMs. These people are just wannabe book writers and they're trying to exert puppet-like control over them. Is that there's this theory between simulation and the narrative. Well, here's something that many people don't want to acknowledge of that ilk. When you have a DM, you have quite literally a supercomputer of a mind before you. Take advantage of it. Simulations tell wonderful stories. They have wonderful narratives, but they're ever changing. They ever evolve. And if you have a great DM, they know when to change things up. This is why simulation, something like Gary Gygax, if you crack open up his old books of how well detailed, how it seems like a living, breathing world, it gives you everything. I don't mean just a little bit. It gives you everything, that you could do anything in there and still have the story go forward. This is why when you talk about plot armor, DM armor, or whatever you want to call it, it falls flat. This argument that it's an okay concept falls flat because when you literally go, I am putting you in El Andalus, I'm putting you in medieval Spain with magic, there are some fundamental things that are going to happen regardless of the players. And when you start trying to put DM's armor, you're chipping away at a foundation that will make the game... you're chipping away at a foundation that makes the game very good. Because guess what? This is why a lot of people forget about Forgotten Realms. Because when you have plot armor, or DM's armor, or lore armor, the world starts becoming boring. It becomes non-important. The reason why... Yeah.
Also feels kind of cheap. Like, your players know when you just fucked with them. When by all intents and purposes, you should have just beaten the person in front of you, and they know it. You know it, they know it, and yet somehow this person, or this villain or something, gets the fuck up, and just their way of escaping that particular situation is complete bullshit. They know when you're bullshitting them. So, just the whole plot armor thing, and making an argument for it, that it protects the players and it protects the important characters to the storyline, is complete bullshit. There are other ways to keep your players from killing certain characters before they're ready.
Well, here's one of the other problems when DMs talk about this. When you put plot armor, it doesn't make you a better DM. It actually makes you a worse DM. And the biggest thing is, when you build those type of stories where you need specific characters or players to be alive, you're going to have worse stories and games. Let's look at, for example, how I run my game. Your enemy is not an individual. It's a nation. The player's ultimate enemy is the Tiefling Empire. I might have major generals, major officers, kings and lords, kings of the whole empire, of the emperor of the whole entire domain. Yeah, you may kill one of them off or all of them off. That doesn't change the fact of this is your enemy and that you must systematically be smart. Now, let's look at something like Horde of the Dragon Queen. You can, if you actually a smart player attack this the right way, they could destroy the Cult of the Dragon in a heartbeat really quickly before it goes to the Rise of Tiamat, by attacking the structure of the Order, severing off the heads of command, and completely causing the cult to tear itself apart. The thing is, if a smart player actually was allowed to do real things, that cult would be destroyed before probably session 10. Maybe session 15, 20, I'm being generous, pushing it up. It's you could have smart players dismantle this whole entire organization, where you now have a complete campaign gone. Why? Because it's on the narrative angle. This is why, guess what? Rachel Zaray, I know she has that smile on her face thinking of what she could have done.
It's not even just that. My son thought was also that even in books and things like that, plot armor still feels like a dick move. Or not even just a dick move, it feels cheap. It feels like an insult to your intelligence, because logically that this villain should have died a long time ago, or that you should have been able to defeat these different forces, or these forces of evil, earlier. That if you had just done one or two things differently, you could have beaten them. It's just complete bullshit when you get down to it, when it's something cheap like that.
Well, here's one of the other things I think is very important for killing and keeping, say, a major villain. Let's say my players magically were able to, quote-unquote, kill a major villain. People will argue, oh, there's plot armor if you keep them alive. Well, yes, it could be done. It all depends also on how you do it. Let's say you guys killed a dragon priest. Well, I've already hinted at that he's some immortal being. That you just didn't kill him the right way, but now he's going to be going after you. He now his actions now change. The thing is, if I kept it on a narrative line, it would have gone that way. This is why, again, there's a small distinction when you do something that looks very similar to plot armor. It's essentially adapting. If they had killed the Dragon Priest, he would have resurrected, because that's what I built into him. It wasn't a failsafe for players to kill him, but it was ultimately, if someone killed him, it would ultimately mean he will return and he will hunt them down. If they found the right way immediately how to kill him, he's removed, regardless of what I wish. And they get their special extra magical bonuses. The thing is, that's not plot armor of one way or the other. It's ultimately flushing out your characters. And that's the biggest thing. Plot armor stops you from flushing out characters. This is me as a DM. I literally build my characters with fail-safes in mind of going, if they're killed or attacked or harmed, what would be their most likely actions in the world to take? Oh, you were nice to me? He's going to work with you and most likely try to use you and manipulate you so he's better off. Oh, you killed him and he has a regeneration stone, or he has a phylactery and he was just a low-level lich, or my own version of a low-level lich. Well, he's going to remember you and he's most likely going to come back. Again, or my favorite one, if you really are so dead set on a villain succeeding and surviving, you have to have him connected to some form of organization. And there's a reason why behind this. The people can come, they can resurrect him, and you leave a visible scar and mark from what your players have done. You also have to realize it. You should rewrite what you had planned for him. That is the most important thing, and Rachel knows this is what I do. Mm-hmm. You do something different. If the players do something different that you weren't expecting, and you still want this character to be surviving, and you have other reasons why he should survive, and I say should, you rewrite his story. End of discussion, for the express reason, if you rewrite it, you've already made the story simulation, but also has the narrative still intact. But it's not the DM's narrative, it's the game's narrative. It is moved beyond the entity of the players and the DM individually into a, this is what the story shall become due to your actions.
Okay. I still can't get over the fact that all of this is just ultimately lazy writing. Mm-hmm. There's no excuse for it at all. There's not even an excuse for it in a book, I would argue, because like I said before, it often becomes that you're going to see it. The reader is going to notice, and also you need different skills to be a DM. Mm-hmm. When comparatively speaking to like the writer of a novel, you need different skills, and the main one is improvisation. And so if you are a DM and something goes a little bit differently than you had planned, or a lot differently than you planned, mm-hmm. It's time to start making shit up. And a lot of times, like the people who write novels, and and the DMs who get too tied into the narrative that they had been planning, too often they are not able to improvise like that. And that's why they need the plot armor. Because they don't have anything else planned. Mm-hmm. They don't have a backup plan. They don't have a backup plan for their backup plan. They don't have, as a backup plan, just making shit up.
Exactly.
And they will be the first one to tell you, well, I don't have anything else. I guess we're just going to have to end things for the night. And it's like,
fuck that shit. That's all I'm saying.
And I've explained to you before, and I know we've said this to death about the time that I convinced my group to become Sky Pirates. That was because there was a very painfully linear storyline where he had tried to, he had a very specific idea in mind that he, like so much so that he did not plan for us taking the crazy out there solution, which mm-hmm. was we came to the realization that suddenly all of our enemies were in a single place. And that we had explosives. And an easy getaway. And that is what we did. We bombed the shit out of all of our enemies.
That's ultimately what you should do. I mean, like...
And he had no plan for that. We literally fucked the entire campaign with a single action. Because he planned for all of this world building and all of this backstory and everything like that, but did not plan for a group of people that he had known before to make crazy decisions like that. He did not plan for them to do that.
Well, well, here's one of the other things that I've heard DMs and players, and this is, again, I can look at TV tropes just like anyone else, and it doesn't mean it's right. Like, one of the arguments I think I've ever heard from these people who really, I don't care if they have 40 years experience on me, this is not plot armor, was, I think one of them, they tried to use the argument for points of inspiration, or Dark Heresy's concept of fate points that you can re-roll your rolls, or you can burn it and technically survive in a situation that you would ultimately die in. Well, this is something that, again, is stretching the term plot armor. And this is why, again, I do not use that term lightly. And Rachel knows my style of play is very much, you do that shit, have fun. I'm gonna let you bite. I'm gonna let you bite on the pillow and just deal with it, because it turns out better stories. But if you burn a fate point, let's say in Dark Heresy, I'm relatively familiar with that. Not all cases of fate point burning will make you survive. It ultimately can still end in your death. And yeah, many people want to argue, oh, that's just the big bad guy is dead because I bled out and killed him in my last shot. Like, you're still dealing with the fucking consequences. Yes, there are abilities that you can manipulate the environment, but it's very much in limited fashion. Plot armor does not work like that. And the one thing I love about something like Dark Heresy, as a DM, you got a lot of leeway, and for me, if I fall in love with my players' characters a lot. This is why, for me, narrative and simulation is very important. But it's very much, if I find a character, like, I always ask, do you want your character to survive? This is a very important concept. Yeah, Rachel's humming because she's already hearing my brain twirling around trying to make my argument.
Yeah, I am.
It's like, do you burn this fate point? Your character will no longer be the same. I, as a DM, will actually put many points against them that you must play with.
You know what I think about when I think about plot armor? I think the easiest representation of plot armor is like the stormtroopers from like the old Star Wars movies, like the originals, also known as the only fucking Star Wars movies that matter. Mm-hmm. And the stormtroopers can't shoot worth a shit, and the only thing that's really protecting, like Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo, are basically plot armor. Mm-hmm. Like, they like, what is the purpose of making, like, the stormtroopers a shitty shot? The thing is, like, they have to be decent shots, otherwise they wouldn't be able to hold the power that they do. They have to have been able to take out people in the past, so how exactly is it that they can't shoot anyone? And the only thing that's protecting our main heroes are...
They're the heroes. They're the heroes, so they must survive.
Plot armor. Plot armor, basically.
Well, I mean, like, well, that's the thing, is, like, here's the thing. When you use the term plot armor in movies, this is a completely different environment. This is why literary terms don't properly translate over to tabletop. If you're going to have to do plot armor here, or you're going to use plot armor, you're trying to do a narrative, I have a pen and paper, open up Notepad, there's where it goes, first things first. But the term plot armor, it's very much, it can be used effectively. Like, okay, plot armor for, say, Bruce Wayne, Batman. It comes down to the psychological torment that will come with them. The thing is, you can't really properly do that in D&D or any of these things for an express reason why. If it just turns into psychological horror or trauma for the player, it's not going to actually be true trauma. It's very much like, oh, okay, I'm going to survive this, it's not going to matter. You can easily distance yourself from them. In the moment, you're going to be also like, oh, okay, I'm going to survive this. I'm going to play it up, ham it up, and then move on. When it doesn't have the same impact as in books, movies, or whatnot. That's a very important distinction that you can't translate. This is an interactive medium. You have a DM in front of you. Take advantage of it. DMs, let go of your narrative. Players, let go of the narrative you want to tell. Because guess what? Your characters will be better for it, because I don't care if the dice is RNG, random number generator. It creates better things than you will realize.
You know, I think that's really what it comes down to is DMs have to be willing to go off the beaten path with the story, and players need to be willing to go off the beaten path with their character and leave them open for development they didn't previously expect. So all kinds of stuff can happen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it always, like you said before, does result in things that are more positive than negative.
Well, that's the thing, is many people take it as a negative, and I understand why they take it as a negative. It's because they're not used to having a bump in the road. Hell, the story for your characters alone in the games we've been playing is you guys have run into so many bumps in the road, and I've noticed the times that you guys get frustrated, and I'm not going to always stretch it out, but it's ultimately like you guys start realizing I can't do certain actions. It's not me as a DM smacking you down because I don't want it. It comes down to, I'm going to release the equivalent of a rocket launcher in a close, enclosed area. My biggest remark is, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? And guess what? It starts making them plan their attacks. It actually healthily makes them react better. Like one of my players, they were shooting off their equivalent of a rocket launcher in the game. And he went blind and deaf for a session and a half. He learned his lesson, and one of the moments where he released his explosive rocket launcher entity weapon off, it was a very important moment because he was terrified of seeing enemies rush him, so he did it to lock off the battlefield to save them. Guess what? If he had treated it like he normally did and had the concept of plot armor, he would have just been shooting that thing off, not caring. Oh, I've done damage. Oh, people are hurt. Oh, move on. Now that he's gone, realizing, like, I might actually not be able to properly attack and fight, his player has his play style, his growth, his characterization, how he interacts, how his narrative has been going, has jumped dramatically. And that would not be possible if I gave him plot armor. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said before, you know, if you feel the need that you absolutely need, plot armor, you're doing it wrong, basically. And here's another thing, I think, before we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
There are a variety of things that you can do to keep players from getting at your villain. One of which being that you don't actually see them in person until later on.
Yeah, have them work through intermediaries because let's face it.
Give them low level bosses. Give them mid bosses, or even just let them interact with the aftermath of this evil organization or the person in general. The aftermath, that they don't actually get to meet the villain, but they see all kinds of third-party stuff instead.
Well, I mean, like, for a plain simple example, you guys ran into the bosses several sessions ago, the two tieflings. And you saw how they responded to, in cold indifference, they threw their minions, and they walked away. And guess what? These characters, you already understand who they are. Now, if the players had found a way to kill them off right away, there's a good chance I probably would have had one of them, like if someone, because I would force them in a line where they would have to choose which one do they kill. Then the other one escapes and gets away, and then is more vehement and violent. Like, it's a plan out, and this is why, again, it takes a long time. Well, I think that's probably a call to say it's time by the dog.
Alrighty then. So all of you, have a good night. If you like us, follow us on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know how you feel about what we've said in the comment section below. If you just totally disagree with us, make a carefully written argument beneath, or just say whatever the fuck you please, and let us know. So and have a nice night.
Night, guys.
All right.